Africa, the mother of all continents.
A land brimming with human, material, and natural resources.
Bedeviled by challenged leadership, socio-economic instability, and war.
In the midst of the chaos, there exists a group of individuals and organizations working to rewrite this narrative.
Non-profits and non-governmental organizations, bridging the gap of human existence.
Telling stories about the third sector. My name is Kemak Onyenuchea. Join me at 1300 hours West African time every Monday and Thursday on Africa Business Radio as I bring to you the success stories as well as the challenges faced by non-profit organizations in Africa and the individuals who run them. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com or download the Africa Business Radio app on Google Play Store and Apple Store. The third sector on Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the beautiful month of March. It's officially springtime. Yay! It's so great to have you on the other end of your digital devices, tuned into Africa Business Radio and listening to the third sector. My name, as always, is Kemak Onyenuchea, and I'm so glad that you're sharing this time of your day with me. I have a very special, an absolutely fabulous woman in the studio today, and she will be sharing with us from her experience in the non-profit sector as one of the foremost leaders of a non-profit organization that is vested with huge interests in the development of women and girls. I have with me in the studio today Fabia Ogunmekan, the Executive Secretary and CEO of the Women in Successful Careers, Whisker. Fabia is a lawyer and a corporate executive with 20 years experience working in the fields of law and development across corporate organizations and the non-profit sector. She holds a Master of Science degree in non-profit management from the Cass Business School, City University, London, and a Bachelor of Laws from the Nigerian Law School and LLB from the University College London. She has attended a number of capacity building courses in the areas of law, leadership, corporate social responsibility, and management. She's also an alumnus of the Lagos Business School Senior Management Program, SMP 36. She has worked in legal practice as an associate with the law firm of the Law Union in Lagos and as a corporate/admin secretary Pro Natura Nigeria, a sustainable development NGO in Port Harcourt, focused on empowering communities in the Niger Delta towards achieving sustainable livelihoods. With Hygieia Group, an integrated healthcare services company in Lagos, where she spent 8 successful years in different management and executive roles, culminating in her role as head of group legal and regulatory compliance. The Tony Elumelu Foundation as an alumni engagement manager, where she was responsible for engagement programs and collaborative partnerships for the alumni network. Fabia has consulted and is a facilitator at the Lagos Business School's non-profit leadership and management program. In her spare time, she volunteers as a mentor. She's also a 2018 Rise Up leader and is passionate about the pursuit of development in Africa and the role of women in enabling that happen. You are welcome to the Third Sector, Fabia.
Thank you very much, Kamak. Thank you.
It's my
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. It's such a pleasure to have you. Of course, you're just a bundle of energy, and every time I see you, I just want to give you a mushy teddy bear hug and just recline and have fun.
More hugs after this.
I know, right?
Otherwise, no one will hear me.
Awesome. Thank you so much once again for being on the show today. Now you have a very interesting career trajectory. Now you started out as a lawyer. Were you like most, Nigerian children of our generation whose parents got to choose what we studied for our first degree?
Yes, interestingly. Well, started out as a lawyer, and I would say I'm still a lawyer. It's one of those professions that you can never run away from. And in fact, one of the reasons why I did law, and yes, my father was a huge influence in my studying law. I was what you would say when I was growing up, an all-rounder. So I was good in most subjects. So I didn't necessarily fall into the box of sciences and arts.
Okay.
In fact, I was headed down the route of being a medical doctor,
right?
Because my mother is a medical doctor, and of course, that had been ingrained in me from when I was small that you would go that route.
Nice.
And then, like I said, I was also sort of good in the sciences, but I didn't like physics. I didn't like physics, and of course, in secondary school, then you would have to, I don't know but I think that's even the route still in Nigeria these days. Fikemba, so physics, chemistry, biology. And I hated physics. And interestingly enough, I realized that it wasn't because I hated the subject itself. I didn't like my teacher. And it didn't necessarily make it easy for me.
I hated the subject. I still do.
I was all right in maths, right? So I reckon I could have done physics because everyone was like, but if you can do physics, if you can do maths, you can do physics. But anyway, it turned out interesting. Later on, when I went to do my A-levels, I realized that you actually didn't need physics to do medicine. All you needed was chemistry and biology. So I could have been a doctor actually, but then, it wasn't meant to be.
Right.
So I sort of moved towards the social science subjects. And when it came to picking a choice, for university and what I wanted to study, I had a long conversation with my dad, who is a great mentor. And he sort of said, it's always good to have a profession, and law is a very, it's a vast profession and it's a flexible profession. You can do different things. And so that's how I decided to study law. It wasn't that, I didn't come from a family of lawyers, so it wasn't as if law was in my blood and my background.
Right.
It was just, I fell into the career, I would say. But I think more importantly, from an early age, I always knew, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know there was anything called development, but I knew I had a passion for people. I knew I had a passion for teaching, right? So at one point, I thought I was going to be a teacher when I was younger.
Oh, really?
Yes, I had this blackboard that they bought me as a present, and I was always standing and talking to myself and my imaginary audiences, exactly, and writing on my blackboard and everything. So, well, in some ways, in the work we do, we're constantly learning, training, facilitating. So I think at least in some ways I realized that's that dream. But so I knew I had a passion for women from an early age. Again, as a teenager, I had this thing in my head. I want to have a women's magazine. I want to run the first Afro. I didn't know anybody that was Caribbean, but I had this in my head. I guess, my mother used to be a collector of magazines, so I wanted to run the first Afro-Caribbean magazine. I had this thing.
The name sounds so exotic, Afro-Caribbean.
Exactly, Afro-Caribbean. Meanwhile, I think I had come across the Lagos Afro-Caribbean Society, and they did this like carnivals every now and again. So I was probably fascinated by that, I don't know. But yeah, so I've always had a thing in the back of my mind for gender and for development. And then I think it finally was when I was also again studying for my A-levels, and I was studying the civil rights movement in the US, and it just, everybody else seemed to be struggling with remembering case law, Brown and the University Board of Topeka, Kansas, or something like that. Or there were some landmark cases then about segregation and the civil rights movement, and it just, I was remembering these cases and turning them out.
Second nature.
Yeah, so my policy teacher then was like, you have a knack for this, so I think you should sort of move in that way. So I actually considered studying politics and philosophy for a while. In fact, politics, philosophy, and economics, there was a specialized course, but only done in one university. And unfortunately, my intelligence didn't get me to that level of getting into Oxford. So I managed with law at UCL.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Now, of course, I'm going to ask specifically, Whisker is not the first not-profit that you pitched your tent.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about how you got your foot in the door in the non-profit space?
How long do we have for this program?
Oh my word, take as much as long as you
How
require.
long do we have? Okay, so I started off my career after law school. I worked in a law firm, and that is something I absolutely don't regret. And I would say to young lawyers today who sort of already know they want to go the entrepreneurial route and nobody wants to practice, I think there is something in practicing and giving that time to, I would say, your tutelage, right? And sort of it gives you the opportunity to really figure out where you want to, sort of pitch your tent eventually, the sort of opportunities and careers out there, even within the sector. And the discipline, I think more than anything, that ability to get up in the morning, head to a 9 to 5, stay, work, focus. So I'm a little bit old school like that.
I absolutely agree.
It certainly
Fabia.
benefited me.
That's
right?
That's one of my major regrets in life, having not had that
structure,
executive structure.
Exactly. So again, it's a conversation that we have actually from time to time. Incidentally, I facilitated a session at the Lagos Business School, the non-profit leadership management program recently, and we had that conversation because we had a mix of people in the room. We had people who had started their careers out in a non-profit and never really worked in a corporate job, and you had those from
challenges.
And you had those who had done the opposite.
Corporate jobs.
But I think the lines are blurring, to be honest. I think we're bringing a lot of sensibilities of the corporate sector into the non-for-profit. But I also think the non-for-profit sector, starting out your life in that sector, also has a lot to teach business and the typical corporate world, right? So I think there's synergies and the lines are beginning to blur. But I think anyway, whatever it is, wherever you start, that thing about having discipline, structure, I think it's so important.
It's gold.
And an opportunity to learn from your seniors, right? So now everybody is on first name basis and we're all sort of, equal. Breaking those barriers. That is good, but I also come from that old school where structure, seniority, so for example, in a law firm, you start off as an associate, in fact a junior associate, then an associate, then senior associate, and partner, nice. And everybody respects those hierarchies because there is something to learn, but then the lines are blurring and for the good, I would say. So yes, how did I get into the sector? So I, after working for 2 years or so, I just, again, this whole thing came back up. I want to do more. I'm not really I'm not really here to close mergers and acquisitions, and I've done a lot of that, working at the time NITEL was being unbundled and all of this sort of the big government institutions were being deregulated, and I worked on a lot of those deals, but I just knew that my soul was not in this, right? I put in the work, but my soul wasn't in it. I enjoyed going to court and listening to the gist of family law issues.
Oh my word.
Husband and wife are divorcing, what happens to the children. In fact, my eyes were open because I got to learn that it's not always the husband's fault. It's not always the husband that is on the wrong side. Apparently, there are a lot of irresponsible women out there who are actually sort of the instigators of their own divorce and their own problems, and the children were always caught up in these issues.
In the middle.
So it was a great eye opener for me, and I just knew that whatever work I was going to do really had to. I would always need to feel connected to the beneficiaries. So when I then, even in continuing working in law and in the corporate sector, I now started moving towards working as a company secretary, right? So where I would service companies, take minutes of meetings, and still, feel connected in that way to the stakeholders of the organization. And then that got me involved in corporate social responsibility and, sort of understanding what that whole space meant. And the more I did that, the more I then realized I really wanted to. So there was a partner in the law firm who then he was a trustee on the board of an NGO in Port Harcourt, Nature International. And after harassing this guy, once I heard he was connected to an NGO, I hounded him. He's my mentor till today. John Adeleke, God bless them. And he got me my first opportunity. He got me an interview with Nature. I lived in Lagos. I was born in Lagos. I grew up in Lagos most of my life. I went to school in Ibadan, and then I moved to the UK. And I came back and I was in Lagos. I'm a River State girl. I'm from River State, but I'd never lived in Port Harcourt my entire life. I'd gone through Port Harcourt to my village, but never in Port Harcourt. I lived in Port Harcourt. So it was a huge thing for me to pack up and move to Port Harcourt. And I had 3 happy years. At
this point, you were single?
I was single, yes.
Nice.
I was about 25, 26 at the time, and I took the risk. I had some people giving me headache as well in Lagos. You understand?
Oh my word!
Some men just giving me headache left and right. I said, you know what? I need a fresh start.
Oh my gosh!
It couldn't have happened at a better time. So
Nice.
I packed my bags. I moved to Port Harcourt. I remember my mom saying, my dad was happy. I said, yeah, she's going to River State. She's going to learn. Maybe she'll meet a River State guy. All these Yoruba boys that she keeps following. Yeah, I got to meet a nice River guy. And my mom was like, what is in Port Harcourt? What are you going to do there? But, you know. But it was a fantastic learning experience. I worked with a guy who, was again a passionate guy for the sector. I don't know that they come made like that anymore. His name was Chief Bill Knight. He's actually a British man who had lived in Nigeria at two different stages of his life.
Okay.
First, he came as a teacher, and he was a teacher in northern Nigeria, bagged the title there for his work, and left and came back and lived in the creeks in the Niger Delta, along with Chris Alagwa then as well at the time. They lived in the Niger Delta for 10 years. And, studying the communities, bringing up solutions. They pioneered what was called participatory rural appraisals, which is, and then the whole concept of bringing the community to help to solve their own issues.
Their own problems, like owning their problems. Which is such a big deal in the non-profit sector now.
Exactly. And creating solutions around their own problems when liaising with them, because all these were host communities.
Nice.
So I joined Prenatura at the time when they were trying to set up structures, and they'd been basically living out of the creeks for all this while, and they were now coming back to set up a head office in Port Harcourt. So of course my legal background never didn't quite leave me. So my title then was corporate administrative secretary. So my role was putting system structures around the NGO, making sure we were compliant, but it also gave me a feel, obviously, to sort of delve into programs, and that's when I it really opened my eyes to a different set of a different career, so to speak. So that's
this
how
was
I started.
You bringing your schooling in law and merging with your passion for development and change lives.
Exactly.
Wow, that's awesome. That's excellent. And of course, you could never downplay the role of mentors.
Absolutely.
I realize that most successful social sector practitioners always boast one or two very formidable mentors.
Yeah, you heard me just sort of, I don't know that he's that popular, but for me, he was one of the greatest influencers and mentors in my life, and that's a gentleman, and he really is a gentleman, called John Adeleke. Wow. Interestingly, most of my mentors in the beginning were men, and then that sort of started pivoting. Again, all of this happened without conscious planning. I didn't even know what was called a mentor, right? So it was just people who were sort of very strategic, and I just understood the fact that these people could help me. In fact, before we even started talking about, it was mentorship, and now we talk about sponsorship, right? So you can mentor someone, but there's a difference, especially when it comes to women and women moving up the career ladder. Mentorship is not enough. You actually then need
a sponsor, someone who will speak for you, right?
Yes, even when you don't even know the opportunity exists for yourself. Right. So it's beyond even speaking for you and saying, "Oh, I've gone to ask." It's someone knowing that this person has this, and she will be good for this job, and so I'm going to ask her to do this. I had that happen with me, without knowing any of the formal names or what that was called. So I've been lucky.
This is awesome. Okay, now I'm going to take you, like you just said something that hit me.
Yes.
Let's talk a bit about sponsorship.
Right.
Like I know that the whole theme of the whole idea about having someone speak up for you when you are not in the room. And, we're looking at how for a good number of women that have sat in this chair, most of them mentioned the fact that their earliest career mentors were men. Now, are we going to say, does this have to do with the fact that for the most part, women of that generation never really found a place in top leadership and management in organizations to the point where they could function as mentors to other younger women coming up? What would you say? So
I need to think about that one, but just reflecting, I think it's two things, and I don't think it's that straightforward. Number one, remember that I said I didn't even know that these things were called mentorship or sponsorship, right? It was just opportunity. What's the other thing we say? Opportunity meets preparedness, right? So that was sort of how I saw it. So it is possible, it is possible, because when I look at it, obviously even in the law firm that I worked, when I started, there were more men even in the seat of partners than there were women, right? In fact, there was only one woman partner, and she wasn't really a everyday presence in the office. In fact, at the time I joined, she had left on sabbatical to go and do politics. So she was in the House of Reps, I remember.
Oh, nice.
So I never even really had an interaction with her. However, However, there were senior associates who were women, who were the next level down, who were also sort of, again, great mentors to me. I mentioned another lady, Josephine Johnson. She was the one that opened my eyes to the whole corporate secretarial space and literally helped me dot my I's and cross my T's. Again, I think it's also an ability to be a good mentee. So I will just diverge. It's also important.
It is extremely important.
It's the openness to learn.
Right.
The openness to when people are investing time in you and correcting your mistakes.
And you're actually not having a sense of entitlement.
Exactly. No sense of entitlement.
Getting upset.
No, exactly. Not getting upset, not getting, defensive.
Exactly.
But soaking it all in and willing to learn. And I think... Well, I think so. Again, I think that's down to the legal training because you don't have it. You know that there are these hierarchies, so you assume that they must be better than me.
They know better.
Yes. So you are humble and you take on the learnings. Again, another message that I think the younger generation can benefit from.
Right. I absolutely agree.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I think that obviously in most of the cases at the time, there were obviously more men in the senior positions, and so more men who could then sponsor or create those opportunities for you if you were good. But then there were also women, and women, in fact, in the next phase of my career journey, so at Niger, for example, where I spent, like I said, you alluded to 8 years, that was when I then really worked for the first time with women. I had a female boss. I worked directly with the group CEO as her legal advisor for her office, as well as a program manager for a program that had just started then. So Niger was one of the best experiences of my life, and I think that's why I lasted 8 years. I had done 3 years at the law firm, 3 years at Prematura, and 8 years at Niger. And, Niger exposed me to being able to bring on my legal hat and my legal role every day as corporate services executive, but also managing a development program. So they had just started a health insurance program for low-income communities in Kwara State and in Lagos State with the Market Women community. And the program was literally just starting when I joined, and I was responsible.
Like you midwifed the
exactly, program. I midwifed the program, and it was one of the best.
Wow!
I spent 2.5 years doing that, working with the group CEO, a driven, passionate woman. I learned so much from her. And incidentally, she's now mentoring on the Whisker program.
Oh, nice. Interesting.
And she's mentored so many people. And that was my first experience working with a woman in leadership, and it was awesome. And the next level was also a woman as well. So I've also had great experiences. So what I do know is that women will, when they are in those positions, they will help other women. They will generally pull other women up. But then they're few and far between. So they themselves are trying to navigate the space where they are one in a boardroom of 10 or 2 in a boardroom of 15. They're trying to navigate themselves. So I think in some ways, I had this conversation with somebody the other day. We put them a bit under too much pressure to be these draggers and solving all the issues of all women while they're still trying to stabilize.
Right.
But I think that, it's just the way it is with these issues. When you're in the minority, you have to break out of that, that the time frame for you to do well, to excel, and then begin to bring the next person is shorter. So, yeah.
And that's why we keep fighting for gender equality.
Yes, gender inclusivity, equality, parity. And it's Women's Month. Happy Women's Month. Yes. So I'm excited to be here
that we have you as the first guest.
Thank you.
For the month.
Of March.
And we're looking at featuring just women.
Yay!
On
for the month of March, exactly. Super.
Right now, let's look to your specific career with the women in the successful careers, Whisker. Now, how did that journey start?
Again, that's another interesting one. Yeah, I think I've just always been lucky to be in the right place at the right time. I'm going to deviate for 1 second. So a friend of mine, Abosede Jojogan, who's also a tri-sector player. So she's worked in the non-profit space, public sector, and now she's in public sector now, private sector, non-profits, and now public sector. She wrote a book called Building a Conscious Career, or making something about a conscious career. And I often say my career has been unconscious. Right. The only thing I know from the beginning is that I wanted to do something. I wanted to just work in a space where I got to give back. Right. I wanted to work in philanthropy, wanted to work in the whole development space.
And for the most part, most practitioners in the social space, that's
how
overriding
that's it.
motivation.
Yeah, that's overriding. Exactly. Exactly.
I think when we start the journey, then we start to look for structure.
Exactly. So it was my career has been unconscious in some ways. But
I like the way you say conscious.
Yeah, thank you.
That's the right pronunciation.
Conscious, yes.
Yes.
It's been unconscious, but now certainly I'm wiser, and it's and I don't want to jump the gun, but if I was to do things differently, I would certainly be a bit more conscious, more proactive, maybe. In no regrets though. So you asked me a question and I forgot.
Right,
was it
Whisker?
Whisker, yes. So yeah, so I was working at Niger, and things had changed as companies do over 8 years, and I felt the more I was now getting deeper, because I was pulled out of the development side more into the business side and really now heading the legal team. And while I liked that, I still felt very much, having tasted within the same organization, having had the opportunity to work with the non-profits interests.
Right.
I felt I really wanted to be there. I wanted to explore and find out what is this non-profit thing and what can I do. And I knew I didn't want to go in, having worked for 16 years or so at that time, that I didn't want to now go in and start from the bottom.
Right.
Because I felt I'd done the grunt work at different stages of my career. So I felt, that going to do a master's would be the next best thing, which is when I found this course at Cass Business School that was a non-profits course. It was a business school that was running a charities program. And so I resigned from Niger to go and focus on doing the master's. And while I was get my dissertation, I was sort of looking for consulting opportunities because I was fast running out of money.
Oh my word!
So I was looking for consulting opportunities. I spoke to someone who had worked, a lady who had worked with, again, one of my mentors, and said, I'm looking for consulting opportunities. And she said, well, there's really nothing now, but she'll keep me in mind. And I got a call, at some point saying, well, there was an opportunity at Tony Lumulu Foundation, and so that came up. But I was writing my dissertation while I was at the Tony Lumulu Foundation, and my dissertation was on the issues around sustainable fundraising for women's cause-based organizations. Nice. So I limited my study to women's cause-based organizations, not necessarily run by women, but focused on women and girls, or that sort of thing. So a lot of it was obviously female founders. So I was looking for people to interview, and I was introduced to the founder of Whisker, Amina Oyabola. And so I went to see her, and we had our interview for my dissertation. And while we were there, we obviously got talking about the organization, and she was saying, she was sort of looking for, the board was looking for, they've been trying to fill this role of executive secretary for a while.
Wow.
But I had just literally started working at the Tony Lumulu Foundation, and I was doing my job and enjoying it at the time. And then certain personal challenges sort of made me make a decision to transit out of that role. And so I decided maybe I was better off just consulting, because I also had an interest in my own organization. I actually founded an organization called the Imara Foundation.
Oh, nice.
And we never really had time to really structure it beyond doing little philanthropy efforts here and there, doing outreach programs to communities in Makoko on sexual reproductive health and maternal care with a friend of mine, Temi Gua, who's now blown. By the way, she's super, super excellent lady. I know, so doing the things like that, collaborating with my friend Kemi Dallas, who's a trustee on Imara as well, to do little projects again for women and school children and that sort of thing. So I wanted to say, let me take time, finish my dissertation, because I had my dissertation pending. Finish my dissertation and try and put a structure around Imara. And then, so I was consulting. I went back to consult for Prenatura now in a different capacity.
Okay.
And then I ran. So while I was doing that, I then went for the Whisker 10th anniversary conference.
Right.
And it's so interesting about strategy. You see, I didn't just go because I wanted to go to the Whisker conference. I went to the Whisker conference because I was looking for somebody there.
Oh my word.
I had so all you people who go for conferences and you don't check the speaker line, just to go and network. Networking is good, and it's very important.
There has to be something more.
There has to be something more, especially at this level, right? So there was a speaker who I wanted to connect with, and I wanted to go and find this woman. And she was there, and I went, and unfortunately I missed her. She went to the bathroom. I didn't know her runner had gone ahead of her and carried her bag.
Oh my
So
word.
I assumed she was going to the bathroom.
And then coming back.
And then it was like 10 minutes. And
gosh.
so I went outside as in, maybe she's talking to people in the corridor. And I went outside and they said, she just left. I was heartbroken because, again, I had sort of missed at a similar opportunity some months before. Anyway, so then the founder of Whisker was there, and she was outside and seeing some people, talking to some people, and I decided to go and say hello to her because I mean, she had been gracious enough to grant me an interview for my dissertation. So I went to, introduce myself to her and remind her of who I was and thank her. And she said, "Oh, super. What are you doing now?" I said, "Well, I'm just sort of consulting and all of that. I left formal employment." And she says, "We should have a conversation."
Right.
So we had several conversations. And the rest is history.
Oh my word! Yay!
And actually, I think in a week or so, I'll be 2 years. 2 years.
Oh, that's nice. So we're coming for cake and mocha.
If we celebrate those kind of things, why not?
All right, awesome. Now, what would you say differentiates Whisker from other women and girls focused organizations?
Yeah. Okay. So I think what it is for us is, so Whisker is essentially a non-for-profit organization, and we're focused on leadership and capacity building for the next generation of women leaders. So it was founded because the founder herself grew to the top of her career in executive management, had many successful years as a corporate services executive across she's also a lawyer, different organizations in oil and gas, in law, in telecoms and all of that. And she rose to the peak of her career at MTN, where she spent, I believe, 12 successful years, and really rose to the pinnacle. But she found that, oftentimes she was a lone voice in those executive circles, and there were many more. There was a dearth of women, should I say, but not just even at MTN in terms of her being there and in sort of those executive rooms, but across the corporate world, and she wanted to do something about it. And so, as part of her fellowship at the Africa Leadership Initiative West Africa, of which is a fellow, Whisker was birthed.
Oh, nice.
So Whisker and it was birthed really to provide mentorship, right? So to provide capacity building programs for women, upskilling women who have the potential to go all the way. But beyond just capacity building and upskilling, to also provide structured mentorship.
Right.
So I think that is a distinguishing factor for Whisker, is the structured mentorship program which we run. And now there are obviously a lot of women's organizations coming up and doing a lot of mentoring. But I think we do it uniquely and differently because, again, we have a structure around it. We are very careful about who becomes a mentor. We're very careful about who becomes a mentee. It's a robust screening process.
Right.
We have to know that this is something, you really are aspirational. So initially it was set up for women in corporate professions, but we've seen since also allowed or sort of begun to explore relationships with women who are also in enterprise, women who are also transitioning out of the corporate world because women wear all sorts of hats. Right. And we realized that there was a need and we couldn't keep screening some of these women out. So largely it's women who are in corporate careers, but we also have women in enterprise and women who are transitioning between both worlds, from enterprise back into the corporate workplace or from the corporate workplace into enterprise. We have the unique challenges of, at some points, right? So you start off young, it's easy to get into the workforce. You start off on a level platform most of the time. And again, artificial intelligence and technology has a way now of beginning to make the process less stereotypical and unbiased. But then there are issues when you are now in and rising into managerial positions, breaking the glass ceiling. So you still have a lot of women still getting into management because, we prove ourselves at that level. But then breaking the glass ceiling, breaking the old boys network and getting into those hot seats where you can be decision maker and actually make policy. So our advocacy, so apart from capacity building programs, another unique factor is our advocacy. We advocate for a more equitable, a gender equal workplace, a gender inclusive workplace. And that's not just for the benefit of women. Because as you know, when women are in positions of leadership, they make policies that will benefit not just women, but the society.
Exactly.
At the whole.
I absolutely agree.
So we are still the carers and nurturers of society, and we bring that value to the workplace. Not to say that men cannot nurture and care.
No, but
because I don't advocate that at all.
Yes, it's gender equality.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
We know men. Lots of men these days are equally as nurturing as women.
Yes.
So we're gonna go on a very quick musical break, I have a question that I'm going to ask.
Okay.
A question that I hope doesn't throw you off balance.
I'm sure I can handle it.
Awesome. So, listeners, you're still tuned in to Africa Business Radio, and this is still the third sector with Kemak Onyenuchea. And of course, I have Fabia Ogunmekan, the Executive Secretary and CEO of Women in Successful Careers, Whisker, on what I like to call the hot seat. Let's take a quick musical break. When we return, the show continues. Please stay with us.
Baby, I wish I could have been more for you. As I watch you leave, I cannot believe. So it's come to this. All my friends to laugh, 'cause I want you back with me. My baby's gone, gone, gone. My baby's gone from me. Have you seen my baby for me? My baby's gone, gone, gone. My baby's gone from me. Have you seen my baby for me? I feel just like a fool to let you walk away. I wish I held you closer and not push you away. I didn't understand you. I thought your love was strange. I wish I kissed you deeper. Can we find a way? A way? My baby's gone, gone, gone. My baby's gone from me. Have you seen my baby
Africa, the mother of all continents.
A land brimming with human, material, and natural resources.
Bedeviled by challenged leadership, socio-economic instability, and war.
In the midst of the chaos, there exists a group of individuals and organizations working to rewrite this narrative.
Non-profits and non-governmental organizations, bridging the gap of human existence.
Telling stories about the third sector. My name is Kemak Onyenuchea. Join me at 1300 hours West African time every Monday and Thursday on Africa Business Radio as I bring to you the success stories as well as the challenges faced by non-profit organizations in Africa and the individuals who run them. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com or download the Africa Business Radio app on Google Play Store and Apple Store. The third sector on Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa. Right, you're welcome back to the third sector on Africa Business Radio, the show that brings you in-depth analysis of the workings and operations in the non-profit sector in Africa, as well as giving you a bird's eye view into the lives of the individuals, I call them the angel humans, who run these non-profit organizations. My name remains Kemak Onyenuchea, and I'm your host. And sitting with me in the studio today is the beautiful, fabulous Fabia Ogunmekan, the Executive Secretary of the Women in Successful Careers, Whisker. You are most welcome back to the program, Fabia.
Thank you, Kemak.
It's so great to, spend this time with you, and I'm gleaning so much from your life experience. And of course, I'm sure the listeners are also learning a thing or two on how to run, great, what's the word now?
Non-profit organizations.
Exactly.
Social sector organizations.
Right.
Third sector organizations.
Great. And you mentioned something that really resonates with me, and that's something I take umbrage to, I would say, the Generation Zs and the younger practitioners, this feeling of self-entitlement and defensiveness. That's something that is really huge, and young Africans should begin to come away from, applying themselves to learning on the job, to the whole essence of growth,
learning, stewardship, tutelage, humility.
I think that just sums up everything.
Yeah.
Because if someone comes at a job or a task with a mindset of humility, whatever is thrown at you, even when you feel you are non-deserving of those things, especially by way of discipline, correction, mentorship, you accept meekly and understand that at the end of the day, it's all about building yourself, making you fully baked in your chosen, career or profession.
So you can then deliver true impact.
There you go. Yeah. Which really underlies the social sector.
Yes.
Now, before we went on the break, you were talking a bit about the programs at Whisker and how you're focused on, career mentorship, personal development for women. Mm-hmm. I personally believe that the most important and gratifying job on earth is raising children. That's my sincere belief and opinion, and that's why I have such great regard and respect for professions that have to do with nurturing lives, like teaching,
Yes.
and other those types of professions where you actually groom young people to
Young
become
minds.
to become balanced adults.
Yes.
Now, does Whisker have a program for mothers that work in the home, what we call stay-at-home mothers?
Well, we don't have a specific program for stay-at-home mothers, but then stay-at-home mothers, we have what we call the open series programs. So we don't, outside of the core structured mentorship program, we have what we call the open series programs, which is then open to not just women, but men as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you
How
see,
come I've never heard
we
about
go beyond.
this?
Well, you need to follow us more.
Oh my word, Fabia.
We've been a bit back.
Fabia, you're my friend.
We've been a bit back with social media, but in the last couple of years, we really tried to catch up. So follow us on our social media.
Oh my
pages.
word.
I will share our handles at the end of this.
Right.
So so we do have those programs, and then it's open to everybody. So women who are not necessarily within the mentorship program can attend those programs, and that includes stay-at-home moms. So those are soft skill building programs, right? So it includes, stay-at-home mom, but most stay-at-home moms are usually running one side gig or the other, right? So
Right.
We talk about financial, we talk about your health and wellness, we talk about balance, work-life balance, we talk about, we do courses around, your presentation skills and those kinds, your presentation skills, writing skills. We talk about financial health as well. So as a stay-at-home mom, you're the manager of the home,
Right.
which means you're also probably in charge of the family budget and managing the finances. So building your financial wealth and taking charge of your financial health is one of another sort of the soft skills we provide. So we have 9 of those courses that we run from January till about September, October in the course of the year, which is open to, like I say, not just the career woman, the career professional, the woman in enterprise, but also, and those within our structured program, but those who are men as well and women who are doing different things.
Excellent. I am definitely signing up for one of those programs.
You should.
Fabia.
You should. In fact, we have one coming up next week.
Oh, my word.
Yes, making presentations like a professional.
Oh my word, Fabia, count me in.
Okay, good. Not just talk, we'll follow up.
Certainly.
Yeah.
All right, Fabia. Now, I'm gonna ask. You have come from the legal profession, and now you are like a leading third sector practitioner. What would you say is the hardest decision you've ever had to make in your career as a leading non-profit practitioner in Africa?
The hardest decision I've had to make. Wow. So in the course of this job, in the course of working in the sector, I've had to make every day I have to make, tough decisions. The ability to think on your feet, be a solutions driver, solutions finder, and yet retain the empathy, the passion, try to manage burnout. I mean, these are challenges that we face every day. The biggest challenge, I think, was making that decision to actually transit. I mean, I was thriving. I was thriving in my corporate job. It was a literally safe haven. Certainly, I think my family, they had a choice whether they wanted me to stay in that. Because it brought home some decent income. So I think one of the difficult choices, or one of the difficult decisions I had to make was stepping out from that comfort zone and literally embarking after 6 years onto a new career, right? So the career that I had danced around, a career that I had tasted, but not with my 2 feet fully in.
Right.
Which is why I went and I decided to invest in myself by doing an MSc in non-for-profit management to sort of prepare me and prepare me because I knew I was going to be making the sacrifice to not be coming in at program management level but at the leadership level. And so I was deliberate in choosing a non-for-profit organization that was very well structured, had I would say obviously based on who the founder and the board of trustees are, a world-class structural system in place and governance principles in place. But it was a decision to take a big salary cut. Salary cut, literally. I mean, I have people who ask me till today, what do you do? Oh, I'm the executive secretary of Whisker. okay, they assume it's a part-time job.
Right.
They assume it's an informal network that I am running, right? So like social millennials, like, so like that is your job, like that's what you do full-time. I still get that today. I still had family members who say, clearly you don't need money.
Right. Otherwise, why would you move
either you have,
slush?
you're acting like a trust fund kid because you've left your job and you're now doing this.
Oh my word. I wish I was a trust fund kid.
I wish I was. I said this has nothing to do with any trust fund though. There's no money coming from anywhere except, I have an understanding spouse who really just understands that I am so passionate about the sector. He has been with me all the way. He was with me when I left Niger and embarked on this master's. And he understood that I wasn't going to invest XYZ amount of money studying a master's and not come back and then do something that would help me practice, relate it, and then practicalize it. And this is, and so that's the journey that I've embarked on. So it's been a sacrifice in terms of, and even the hours, it's almost like running your own business. You work harder than you've ever worked, because in a corporate job or in a typical corporate system, you have all these structures. So despite the fact that I say we have governance and structures in place, we still run as a small business. You understand? So you don't have an IT department or a facilities department or a HR department that takes care of those things that then enables you to just focus on the work. You have to be still managed. Your little core teams of staff still have to be. We are all IT managers. We're all facility managers. We're all HR managers. And then we run the programs.
And sometimes even chauffeurs.
And sometimes exactly chauffeurs and all sorts of things. So it's hard work, but I wouldn't change it for anything.
Wow.
It's given me a huge platform, to be able to realize my dreams. I've always wanted to work in gender, and I'm doing just that. I always wanted to be able to touch the beneficiaries of my work. I'm able to hear the stories of the alumni, I'm able to hear their transformation stories. But today, this is where I pitch my tent, and so, I'm just talking generally. It's Whisker, it's the non-for-profit sector in general.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. So no regrets whatsoever? No
regrets. I'm grateful for every day. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to have found my passion. People are still looking for what their passion is.
Right. A few weeks ago, I was talking to a lady and I asked her, what's your passion? And she says, I don't know.
Yes. Exactly.
So it is a huge blessing to actually have core, concrete, knowing of what your passion is in life.
Exactly.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Right. Now we're practically out of time, but let me just ask you this question. And I always like to ask this question. What 3 factors are the major challenges that you have encountered as a non-profit practitioner?
3 factors.
That have presented the greatest challenge?
I would say fundraising.
I was waiting for that to happen.
We all know that. I mean, you can't be in the sector without somehow, becoming a fundraising lover, basically, right? You just got to figure out the ins and outs of the game. But, it can be tiring, can be draining, constantly begging people, writing grants. I mean, it takes a lot of time. It's hard work. With grant writing, to articulate your thoughts and sort of try to convince someone to
buy into the emotions and logic of funders.
Exactly.
Right.
So fundraising is certainly one. Finding the right resources,
in terms of human
resources, yes. In fact, really, I would say resources, resourcing for the sector. So from finding the right individuals who will, sacrifice and stay the long haul. Good, competent people. Certainly, when you do, holding on to them, retaining them, there's a whole strategy around that as well. Especially so resources, salaries, so resourcing, healthcare, all the things that sort of they take for granted in a typical corporate space. Technology, having the right tools of trade to sort of make the work more efficient,
right? So
that you're not necessarily sort of at that groundhog level. So I would say resourcing, so fundraising or funding, resourcing. And then what's the other thing? Just avoiding burnout. So this passion that we're talking about is all great, and thank God we found our passion.
So we can say self-preservation.
But self-preservation, that's it. So self-preservation, taking those checks that help you to continue to drive the passion, because passion drivers do get burnt out.
Right. And, work in the non-profit sector is largely
intense.
Driven by emotion.
Exactly.
A desire.
Emotion, empathy, we're at the social millennials networking evening the other day. We had the privilege of having Ini Abims, and she was talking about the work she did in Liberia or Sierra Leone and the things she saw. And I mean, I don't even do half of that sort of stuff, right? So my own sort of emotional connections to the beneficiaries is a very different level. But you hear stories. We also do a young girls program, which I didn't talk about, the Whisker Grow and Learn initiative for young girls and men in secondary schools.
Nice.
We do a structured mentorship program for girls. We've reached about 540 girls across six private and public schools in Lagos. So it gets draining. Programming, planning, execution. It does get draining, but
we're trudging ahead.
We will trudge
ahead. There's so much to say,
absolutely.
Fabia.
Thank
now,
you.
How can we reach out to you? Perhaps someone is listening, they want to be a part of what you're doing, a part of Whisker's programs. Can you give us, your handles on social media, phone numbers, emails, and all that stuff?
Yes, I can, and it is. So you can reach us. Our website is www.Whisker, and Whisker is spelled WISCAR. So www.whisker.ng. Very simple. So you can check out our website and get more information about us as an organization. You can also follow us across social media. Look for Whisker and you will generally find us, WISCAR. So on Instagram, we're WhiskerNG. On Twitter, we're Win with Whisker. On Facebook, we're Whisker Nigeria, Women in Successful Careers. And on LinkedIn, we're Whisker Nigeria, Women in Successful Careers. You can also call our secretariat line, which is 0806 645 2894. I'll take that again. It's 0806 645 2894.
And of course, if you're calling from outside Nigeria, don't forget to include the country code +234 and take out the first 0.
Yes.
All right. So it's been an interesting edition of The Third Sector on Africa Business Radio. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Africa Business Radio and on Twitter at Africa Biz Radio. And of course, you can hook up with me on my personal Instagram at kemak.o. That's KEMAK.o. I'll see you on the next edition of The Third Sector. Till then, be good and keep making impact. Goodbye and God bless you.